The Picture of Dorian Gray is a novel written by Oscar Wilde and first published in 1890. The story follows the life of a young man named Dorian Gray, who is wealthy, beautiful, and living in Victorian-era London. The novel explores themes of hedonism, aestheticism, and the corruption of the soul. The novel opens with the introduction of Dorian Gray, a handsome and wealthy young man who has just returned to London from a trip to Paris. Dorian meets Basil Hallward, a well-known artist, who becomes enamored with Dorian's beauty and agrees to paint his portrait. While sitting for the portrait, Dorian meets Basil's friend Lord Henry Wotton, a charming and cynical man who espouses the virtues of hedonism and aestheticism. Lord Henry's worldview deeply influences Dorian, who becomes obsessed with the idea of pursuing pleasure and beauty at any cost. As Dorian's portrait nears completion, he makes a wish that he could remain young and beautiful forever while the portrait ages and bears the brunt of his sins. The wish is granted, and Dorian begins to live a life of debauchery and excess. He becomes a regular at London's most notorious clubs and indulges in drugs, alcohol, and sexual relationships with both men and women. Throughout all of this, Dorian's physical appearance remains unchanged, while the portrait in Basil's studio begins to reveal the physical and moral decay that Dorian is hiding from the world. As the years pass, Dorian becomes increasingly callous and immoral. He seduces the innocent young actress Sybil Vane, then callously discards her when he finds her acting to be subpar. Sybil kills herself, and Dorian is unmoved by her death, continuing his pursuit of pleasure and beauty. He also becomes involved in a blackmail scheme, bribing a man to keep quiet about a murder he committed. Meanwhile, the portrait becomes increasingly grotesque, revealing the ugliness and corruption of Dorian's soul. Dorian's lifestyle and behavior begin to take a toll on his relationships with Basil and Lord Henry. Basil becomes increasingly concerned about Dorian's behavior and begs him to change his ways, but Dorian refuses. Lord Henry, meanwhile, becomes disillusioned with Dorian and realizes the harm his influence has caused. Eventually, Basil sees the portrait and is horrified by the ugliness it reveals. Dorian, in a fit of rage, kills Basil to protect his secret. As the novel draws to a close, Dorian realizes the true horror of what he has become. He seeks to change his ways, but it is too late. The portrait, now fully corrupted and grotesque, begins to haunt Dorian. He becomes increasingly paranoid and fearful, haunted by the portrait's malevolent presence. Finally, in a fit of desperation, Dorian stabs the portrait, killing himself in the process. The portrait, now restored to its original beauty, is found by Dorian's servants, who are shocked at the sudden transformation. The Picture of Dorian Gray is a novel that explores the dangers of pursuing pleasure and beauty at any cost. It is a cautionary tale about the corrupting influence of hedonism and the importance of moral responsibility. Wilde's writing is witty and elegant, with a keen sense of irony and satire. The novel is also notable for its portrayal of homosexuality, which was controversial and taboo at the time of its publication. One of the key themes of the novel is the pursuit of pleasure and beauty. Dorian becomes obsessed with the idea of living life to the fullest, pursuing pleasure and indulging in every desire. However, this pursuit comes at a cost. Dorian becomes increasingly callous and immoral, willing to sacrifice others to achieve his own pleasure. This ultimately leads to his downfall, as he becomes increasingly paranoid and fearful of the portrait's haunting presence. The novel also explores the concept of aestheticism, or the belief that art should be valued purely for its beauty and form, rather than for any moral or social purpose. Lord Henry is a staunch proponent of aestheticism, and his influence on Dorian leads him to pursue pleasure and beauty above all else. However, Wilde also shows the dangers of this philosophy, as Dorian's pursuit of aesthetic beauty leads to moral decay and corruption. The relationship between Dorian and the portrait also serves as a central theme of the novel. The portrait is a physical representation of Dorian's soul, and as Dorian becomes increasingly corrupt and immoral, the portrait reflects this decay. The fact that the portrait is able to haunt and terrorize Dorian in the end serves as a powerful symbol of the consequences of his actions. Wilde's writing style is notable for its use of irony and satire. The novel is filled with witty one-liners and clever observations, particularly from Lord Henry. However, this humor is often tinged with darkness and tragedy, as the novel explores the destructive consequences of hedonism and corruption.